He was clean at the time, and so, you know, and he didn't drink that much, and his voice wasn't a whisper like that. But he was starting to get very, very famous. And then he met this woman, Irene, who was his girlfriend in East St. Louis. And she was the one that said to him, you ought to play in Eddie Randall's band. Eddie Randall was my cousin. Reason he didn't go out on the road was because he became rich as a funeral director. He owned a big funeral home. So on the side he was playing. He had a great band, and Miles could read all the music, could do everything. So he made him his #1 guy in the trumpet. Like, there's some famous pictures of him in Eddie Randall's band, you know. And Eddie's dead now, but he used to tell great stories about Miles, you know. So he started playing in this great band in St. Louis before he came to New York. So that, I had to put that in there because Clark Terry used to come and sit in with Eddie Randall's band and all of that. So by that time, by the time he got to New York, he had been playing in some great bands, you know what I mean, that came through, all these people that came through St. Louis and East St. Louis. So by the time Charlie Parker, by the time he met all these people, he was ready. That's what a lot of people don't understand, that he was really ready, you know? And they just picked him up, you know, everybody wanted him to play with him. He was the first young guy of choice. He made this fateful trip in 1948. By this time, he's on top of it. And, you know, everybody's talking about Miles Davis. Well, and he's playing with Tad Dameron, everybody. He's playing with everybody. And he went to Paris. He went to Paris. He meets Juliette Greco, you know, a beautiful singer there. And they met and they fell in love, you know, I mean, deep. Now he's with this woman, they got children, they got 2 kids, but he falls in head over heels in love for this French woman, beautiful woman. And he had to come back to the United States. He meets Jean-Paul Sartre, he meets Picasso. He's hanging out with these kind of people in Paris, right? Because they're her friends. And they come in to see him play. And he's like, whoa, I don't want to go back to New York. I don't want to go back to New York, where he was struggling, living in Queens with his kids and the woman, you know, was his childhood sweetheart. But he came back, and when he came back, he was so depressed, he started using drugs. First, he started to snort heroin. He started drinking, because he was depressed. You know, he was thinking about going back, and he was like, and the next thing he started shooting. You know, he started mainlining, and he got to be a junkie just like that. So there's a famous story that Clark Terry tells, that he had an apartment on someplace in Midtown, and he sees Miles. Miles is walking around and sitting down with this, you know, a paper bag, and he says, Miles, man, what's happening, man? What is it? What's wrong with you, man? You know, this is homeboy from St. Louis. What's wrong? Come on. His daddy was sending him money, but he was putting it all in his arm. You know what I mean? He wasn't paying his rent, nothing. So he said, come on, man, come on, go up to my apartment. And he takes Miles up to his apartment. And he said, I got to go out and go to rehearsal and do some stuff. He leaves in there. Miles stole from this guy who was his mentor, takes his trumpet, takes all kind of stuff and takes it to the pawn shop. So he can get drugs, you know, so he can get drugs. When Clark came out, he had just taken everything out of the apartment. He couldn't believe it. He was like stunned. He told me, he said that was one of the most shocking things that has ever happened to him in his life, you know, that Miles did that to him. And so his whole personality, he said his whole personality had changed. He became a pimp, the whole thing. He had women on the street, and he was living up here, you know, in the whole streets and everything. I mean, the whole thing. He's hanging with Bird. Bird is a big junkie, you know. They all hanging together, and that's what he was doing, passing the viral everybody who was a druggie. That's what they were doing. Somebody told his father in St. Louis that Miles is gone off the deep end.